Wagyu Khalsa, Wagyu Fateh. Hi, welcome to Late Night Banter with me, Del Singh, and as you can see, I'm actually in the garden. The British summer has arrived, so I thought I'd do a little filming outside here, a bit of al fresco. Hopefully the traffic noise won't actually mask what I'm saying, although it might be a blessing for some folks. Listen, great feedback from last week's show. People saying you did a bit of a late night ranter, went a bit Ben Elton, a bit political, but you know what, we think it's stuff you had to say, so good on you. Those people weren't UKIP or some of the other politicians had to pop out. If you want to hear what I said, go to latenightbanter.com and you can get more on that show and other shows too. This week I just want to have a quick chat about patriotism, nationalism and flags, because there are Indian politicians who are in anguish over a torn flag here in the UK. Guys, if you want to get into real anguish, think about the women being raped in your country, the kids being raped and murdered in your country. That would make me feel that you actually are politicians and you've got a sense about you, yeah? It's not about a flag, yeah? And this is not about me being anti-India, I'm just anti-hypocrite, and I think there's so many hypocritical politicians all over the place, but India seems to have its fair share right now. There are damn sight more important things than flags: people's lives, people's liberty. And when we're talking about liberty, yeah, free Juggy. This is a British citizen who's been imprisoned illegally in India, so maybe if these guys actually got their legal system working a little better, it might work. Not just India, in the States, the US, Donald Trump, you know, having a pop at people for not actually mouthing the words from the national anthem, or guys who took to the knee. Yeah, I'm behind those guys, because if you're not getting what your country's promising you, then that's your way of protest. In fact, most national anthems are pretty ropey, rubbish words and pretty poor tunes. Not exactly quality lyrics. It's hardly All Along the Watchtower or Agadoo that we're singing along to. Only one of those is a good tune, by the way. Sorry, Jimmy. You know what? Even in this country, if you don't mouth the words from the national anthem, or you don't know it verbatim, you're going to get slated. That's just one of those things, yeah? You know, that's not being a patriot. You know, my definition of being a patriot is someone who actually pays their taxes, someone who actually abides by the laws of the land, yeah? Somebody that helps others, does good, and basically gets on with things and makes a valid contribution to society, yeah? But just because you don't sing a national anthem, yeah, or you don't have a Union Jack tattooed on your backside, you're not a patriot, yeah? But there's guys out there who've got all of those things, the tattoos and whatever, and they can sing it out, but guess what? They're out there mugging pensioners or dealing drugs, yeah? And never paid a penny in taxes anywhere along the line, and when they do get arrested, it's no comment, gov. Yeah, they're patriotic, I clearly wouldn't be. So, you know what, my definition of different people's definition of patriotism, miles apart. So, you know what, we should think about humanity before we think of nationalism. That's in my view. Anyway, this is about banter, and this is Late Night Banter, so as I always say, let banter commence. Good evening, welcome to Late Night Banter with me, Del Singh. And today the setting is a chamber. It's the chamber here at Redbridge Town Hall. Hopefully it won't be too much of a torture chamber for my guest, who is leader of Redbridge Council, and that's Jas Atwal. Hi Jas, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for making us welcome, actually.
Thank you for having me.
No, not at all, not at all. Jas, you know, we're sitting here in the chamber of what is quite a magnificent building here in London, in Redbridge, not fazed by the occasion. Also, by the way, you look really smart, and I'm a bit shabby chic here, so my apologies for that. So there you go. So just kind of cutting to the chase, Redbridge, you're the leader of the council here and so on. Is it fair to say that you grew up in this area and this is kind of your spiritual roots?
Yes, it is. It's 46 years here.
Okay.
Came from Punjab, 1970, and lived within about 1 mile radius of here for the 46 years I've been in England. It's a great place.
Well, glad you said that. It'd be something wrong. People have been battering your door down if you said it wasn't. So, and obviously growing up, you've seen a lot of change in the Redbridge over those years, since the 70s when you came, obviously. Growing up in the 70s, you know, what was so good about this area in that time?
I think some of the things that have sort of moved on since then, the things that I remember certainly as a child, I think the lack of technology means that you wake up in the morning, if it's Sunday, Saturday, you end up in the park.
Right.
And there's plenty of parks. And certainly in terms of Ilford, Ilford was a very posh place.
Okay.
And you know, you almost had to dress up to come to Ilford. It was that posh a place. And even within about a mile from here, that's how it changed. So it sort of is home, but then it was also the place you visited as well.
Okay.
So, you know, you got both home and the place you visit all in one. And that's really sort of unique.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, you see, because I've got a connection to Ilford. My sister, Sharanjeet, and my brother-in-law, Kulwant Singh, actually live here in Ilford. And I've been coming here for the last 30 years. Now I know you saying it being posh is why people actually didn't like me coming here, because I always used to look so scruffy. So you've nailed it now. Finally, after all those years, I know why I was never made so welcome in Ilford. It was like, you know, Del, you need to dress up. Come on, what's wrong with you? So in terms of your success, I know you credit a lot of that to your parents, as most of us do. But you know, you put it down to the fact your parents worked in factories. So what do they actually do when they were here?
Well, I think it's one of the traditional stories where my father worked in a factory for 25 years. Same factory, no heating, just so he can put food on the table and send me to college to get an education. So I could enhance what he had, the life chances he had. And certainly I think with my mother, arthritis, and suddenly, you know, sewing ties at home. And of course, the things we had to do was come home and help because it was a family business. And of course, you know, my brother, my sister, we'd all sort of muck in and we'd be doing that till 10, 11 o'clock at night. And that's how we paid the bills. And so it was a humble upbringing, but it was a very happy upbringing. And you know, the family was together. We can be in the same room now and, you know, we're down on our sort of WhatsApps and iPhones and everything else, and nobody ever speaks to anybody.
But isn't it amazing? Because, you know, you mentioned that. I mean, again, I, like you, came from that sort of family background. We obviously had shops, but then, you know, we had the, you know, we were helping there after school till all hours and so on. And you know, what really annoys me is when people these days take a look at you, and I'm talking primarily about sort of people who maybe are a lighter shade of colour than we are, will turn around and sort of say, you know, you guys have had it easy, you come here and take our jobs. I don't think we ever took anyone's job. We actually probably did a lot more than these guys ever imagined, but they just won't, you know, they won't ever give you credit for it.
I mean, I think what we did the jobs that nobody else would do. And now, certainly with the help of the education and the perseverance, what we're trying to do is really take roles in society and actually try and take people along with us. And I think that is really key. And when people say to me nowadays, you know, there's racism. And when I say, if you think this is racism, go back to 1970.
Well, actually, you know what? You've kind of almost preempted something I was just about to ask you. So again, you know, unless there's a telepathy vibe going on here, I was going to say, because, you know, we're about the same age, although you look a lot better than I do, and so on. Certainly smarter than I do, obviously. My mum watches us on the TV. She's going to give me Lanatha for wearing a T-shirt again. So, but, you know, so I think we both probably grew up in the 1970s.
Yes.
You know, school and so on. I mean, did you, you know, you talk about racism. I mean, what was the kind of racism you encountered at school growing up?
I mean, it was proper overt racism where, you know, you couldn't walk down the street. You will certainly get called names. I remember sort of 1970 coming here and then having my hair cut. And certainly I think around about 1976, I decided I wanted to go back to my traditional. And that's when the trouble started. So when, you know, when people say there's an issue with a burqa or a turban nowadays, you know, try going back to the 70s because you had to be, you know, your radar had to be switched on.
It's sad. I mean, you know, we're sitting here in 2018 and literally only a couple of weeks ago outside the House of Parliament. You know, Tandesi reported, you know, a gentleman going in to see him with a turban on. Somebody tried to pull his turban off and, you know, called him a Muslim and then cowardly ran off, which, well, you know, what these cowards do. You know, my view is, you know, to any cowards out there, right wing, you know, you want to have a go, actually do it face to face on one-to-one, you'll get your backside kicked by a decent Sikh. It's one of those things because, you know, we are very protective of our crown, of our turban. But, you know, I mean, what you say really resonates with me because I know growing up, I mean, I obviously went through that pain of being kind of one of the only kids at school, well, certainly me, my siblings and I were the only three kids with turbans in our school, and so yeah, you were an instant target with the hope your head gets better, and is that a towel on your head, and you got all of that stuff that some people thought was totally humorous, but it wasn't. So did you develop any sort of defense mechanism to that? Were you a fighter or kind of more of a kind of orator or a runner, or what was it that your defense?
I think it's called tactics.
Right.
You know when to run,
Yeah.
and you know when to fight.
Right.
And you had to develop that quickly, because
Yeah.
if you made the wrong choice,
Yeah.
you're going to get found out very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I did, going back, and I remember one instance very, very clearly. I came home absolutely battered and bruised.
Really?
And that sort of develops that sixth sense. And certainly I think making sure that you did the right things.
Yeah.
You fitted in. Of course, you can never fit in when you're dressed like this.
Yeah.
But what you did do was you made the right choices.
Yeah.
And certainly in terms of being in the right place at the right time was a skill that you had to develop, because if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you're not going to get out, without a good kicking.
Now, I mean, I know my oldest brother, Manjeet. I mean, he was a big guy. I mean, he's a guy that went on played rugby, American football, so he was big. People would seldom pick on him, and I was kind of like, a bit more puny. So I know when he left the school, all of a sudden I was like, I've got nobody watching my back anymore. And there is that famous phrase, or it's, well, I think it should be famous or infamous. It's he who turns and runs away returns to run away another day. So that was a coward's mantra. I don't think I was ever a coward, but I was never a fighter.
Yeah.
The one thing I did learn very quickly was that if you could put someone down and kind of like be funny or at their expense, they wouldn't pick on you. So people would say, don't pick on that guy because he's sharp-witted or insult you or turn, people will laugh at you. And I kind of like found that was my defense mechanism rather than running or fighting, was just to kind of like, give people a put down. And after a couple of times, they'd leave you alone. Don't touch that guy because he's going to kind of like make you a laughing stock. But, it's sad that all those years later, we're still in there. But you're right, the 70s was racism rife. And, for those of us that kind of like grew through that, what people face these days, or hopefully our children, grandchildren face these days, thankfully isn't kind of as severe as we got back in the day. So, following on from your schooling, you obviously went on to university, and I believe did you go to LSE? Was it London School of Economics?
LSE, yeah.
Okay. And is it fair to say, was your political awakening around that time, or did that happen beforehand? Or?
No, actually, the political awakening was very late.
Okay.
It was very late. Going to LSE, I think I was more of a sports person.
Okay.
More involved in football.
Okay.
Played that sort of 5-6 days a week. I would say,
Blimey.
Without playing professional football, I think I claim closest to being a professional footballer, because I'd play 4 or 5 times a week for different teams.
Okay.
And that consumed all my time. When I wasn't playing, I was training.
Right.
And so, I was known all the way across London, different universities, different teams, different clubs. And of course, being the only one with a top knot.
Yeah.
And playing for a team in Dagenham.
Right.
And certainly sometimes I say this to my children, the guy who was playing centre half was 6'4".
Yeah.
The guy who played centre of midfield was 6'9". The goalkeeper was 6'2". And, they're all 6+. And there's me, 5'8", stretched up.
Well, you just have to tell you the top knot a bit higher up and so on. So by the 3 foot Judah.
Yeah. I think, it makes you a stronger person.
Yeah.
Because certainly, you're going to get picked out.
Yeah.
And certainly you haven't got many people who are going to defend you.
Yeah.
And that sort of makes you a stronger person. And so, the survival instincts are there. But, there were great times because...
Did your parents have any issues with you putting so much effort into sport and not in... Or were you balancing it with the studies as well? Or were they sort of saying... Because I know sometimes Indian parents will say, look, you're never going to make a living playing football, or you're never going to do this or whatever.
Waste of time, they said.
Did they really? Okay.
Waste of time. There's a friend of mine, John Sanger, what he would do, he'd take my boots home, he'd take my kits home, and I'd come home sort of, I've been doing this and
the hallmarks of the devil.
Of course, the day I broke my leg, there was no hiding it. And that's when, I almost got attacked in the hospital by my mother.
Oh.
Like, you've been lying to us all this time.
It's a bit like Bend It Like Beckham, but it's Bend It Like Jazz. So, yeah, you got found out. That's quite something. So I've got to ask you the question. I mean, in this part of the world, do you support a local team, or did you affiliate football? Or
I'm
not?
a long-suffering Arsenal supporter.
Boom. Same here, actually. Yeah. So, okay, fine.
Wenger out.
I see people actually switching their TVs off now, the Spurs fans, or they're laughing, actually. They're doing remarkably well. But, yeah, I too am a long-suffering, or a suffering fan of their club. So there you go. So it's about time that gentleman just moved on. He's done a great job, but I think every dog has his day. So there we go.
He's had his.
He has had his. So you've got an affiliation, obviously, with the Labour Party when you went into sort of, into that politics and so on. I mean, again, was that something forged because your parents were kind of from a working class background? You thought that was it? Because you've also been in business, and businesses tend to gravitate more towards the Conservative end of things, business people. So why the Labour thing?
I think it's the Labour values, the compassion side, and certainly making sure that you got that fairness across the borough, fairness across business. Always supported Labour. As a person who grew up, certainly being able to vote in the 80s, it was always Labour, and you did what everybody else in the family did. And of course, when the political awareness came, and it was at the height of sort of the Tony Blair era.
Okay.
And then suddenly it didn't go so well. But then after that, I think it really started to develop. And when we came into the council, it was more in terms of, because Redbridge has been a borough where we've had, I think, one minority administration, Labour.
Right.
But other than that, it's never had a Labour administration on its own.
I'll come on to that in a bit. So that's where it was. So just crisscrossing a little bit, when you graduated, obviously the politics came a little bit later. So when you graduated, you got beaten by your mum for playing football. You obviously then went into business, as all good Indians and good people do, go into business and so on. What kind of thing did you do in business? So after you graduated, what were your roles?
After I graduated, I went to train as an accountant.
Okay.
And then '94, my son was born.
Okay.
And my first child, and I realised all the things I wanted to afford for him, I couldn't afford.
As an accountant?
As an accountant. I quit.
Did you not cook the books? You could have done it easily.
I could have done it. I quit, and I had no idea what I was going to do, and I got a lucky break into an IT company.
All right.
And I started fixing computers, and at that time, the wave was coming.
Right.
And then I rode that wave, and certainly got into computer training. I worked for an American company, and I remember sort of training became so it overtook my life.
Okay.
I would be out of the house literally sort of about 35 to 40 weeks of the year.
Was this you training other people?
Yeah, training other people.
And as someone who's in the computer industry, what was that training on? Applications or training on sort of operating systems and so on? So was it mainly sort of DOS, Windows, that sort of stuff, or was it Unix? Or?
It started off as Windows.
Okay.
And certainly we Windows NT.
Okay.
And Novell NetWare.
Novell NetWare.
Yeah.
Oh God. You're aging me. Quick, stop somebody. There's people probably saying, what the hell's that?
Yeah.
So.
But the thing was, in 1997 when I started training, it then went into when Windows 2000 came.
Yeah.
In terms of securing Windows 2000.
Okay.
I wrote the course that actually was used by a company called Learning Tree International. It's an American company.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
And I remember training in Washington, D.C., Reston, a couple of months after 9/11.
Right.
And that was not a difficult period, but certainly that's when I saw people, when they looked at me, it was like, this guy seems like an interesting kind of person. He's slightly different to... He's a terrorist. We need to be aware of him. Yeah. And I could see that the way people sort of behaved towards me changed literally overnight. 9/11 changed it. Yeah. And then I sort of carried on training till about 2006, and that's when we started sort of when my children weren't recognising me because I was out of the house, too much. And
Mum, there's a bloke at the door. Who's it? Yeah, it's your dad. Yeah.
Something like that.
Let him in. He's all right. Just forgot his keys. Yeah.
And And that's when I sort of decided, we need to do something local, something respectful. And I went into children's daycare nurseries and started up a children's daycare nursery from scratch. And then from there, I gave up the IT training. And because then I had the time to be local, and that's when the politics started coming, because otherwise I was never here. I remember I spent all my time traveling. And I remember sort of coming into Ilford once and getting lost, because I hadn't been here for like about 8 years, and the new gyratory system had come in. And because I'd come home on a Friday, spend a Saturday at home, and I'd be off on a flight somewhere on the Sunday morning. And then we sort of started, spending time in the community, and that's when the politics started coming.
Brilliant. It's interesting. I mean, it's like anecdote. I mean, I too, around the time you're talking about, was doing a lot of travelling in IT. And in fact, as you sort of say, I know 3 months after 9/11, I had to be in the States, in Providence, Rhode Island. I actually ended up basing myself in Manhattan around Christmas time, great shopping and stuff for the kids. And I actually went to Ground Zero. I had been to the towers in 97. So I actually went there, and it was obviously quite something looking at the destruction 3 months afterwards. And I took some flowers, I put them down, and I was reading the missing and have you seen kind of posters. And I could feel eyes burning into the back of me. I looked around, and they're basically just a line of American construction workers, white guys with the little flags in their hats, looking at me like this. And it's never in my nature to sort of exit stage left. So I actually walked over to them and said, "Gentlemen, it was devastating watching this in the UK. Feel so sorry for you," and so on. And I mean, one of the guys turned to his friend and said, "Hey man, come and listen to this guy. He sounds just like an Englishman." And I said, "Well, actually, to all intents and purposes, I'm an Englishman. I just happen to be wearing a turban and a beard. I was born there." And one of these guys sort of said to me, "Your guys did this." And I had to explain, "Look, it wasn't my guy." I said, "It wasn't anybody's guy. They were criminals." And then before they got called away, I actually said, "Timothy McVeigh," and they all looked at me blankly, and they didn't know who it was. And I sort of said, "Oklahoma bomber in '95. Prior to this, that was the biggest terrorist act in the US.
Absolutely.
But the guy was white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, apple pie mom. He was one of you guys. So please, he was a criminal. There wasn't an outpouring of hate towards white guys, so there shouldn't be one towards people of colour. And, if nothing else, you see a guy with a turban, he's probably a Sikh, he's not a Muslim. But if you see a Muslim as well, he's probably not, you try to explain this stuff. So, but, some people will listen, some won't listen, and that's it. So, in respect of the fact that you did the business thing, you got into politics. And I believe it was a friend of yours, Councillor Prakash, who's going to take the blame for this. And is it true he said something like, you only need to give him an hour a week or an hour a month or something?
It started like, first of all, he said, "Will you join the Labour Party?"
Right.
And I said, "Why? I vote Labour. Why do I need to join the Labour Party?" And then he sort of said, "Well, no, just join." And I joined because he said so. He turned up a year after the event, and he said, "Will you fill in councillor application form?" I said, "No, I've got time for that. I won't be doing that." He said, "Look, 1 hour a week, 1 hour every couple of weeks, and you can do as little as you like."
Right.
And I said, "No, I'm not going to do it." So he got another person down. A friend of mine said, "Naam Singh."
Okay.
So both of them came, and then I said, "Naam Singh, I treat him like an older brother." And he sort of said to me, he goes, "Just do it." Filled the form in.
Right.
And I said, "Look, besides, I can't do this. You've got to be a member for a year." And I'd been a member for about a year and about a day. So obviously, Councillor Prakash had planned it well.
Yeah.
And the rest, as they say, is history, because here we are. I've been on the move now since about 7:30, and I won't get home till about 10 o'clock.
Right.
And, there's numerous meetings all day long.
Right.
We've even got full cabinet tonight, and we've got a meeting afterwards and a meeting before. I've got to go to the mosque at 2 o'clock, meet the congregation there. So it's a full-on, full-time job.
So you still don't get recognised at home these days as well. The kids still won't let you in. It doesn't matter what business you're doing. Nobody at home knows who the hell you are. This is crazy. So you kind of got in around 2011. In 2014, it's a watershed moment, because again, Redbridge kind of gets its first Labour majority. I think you got them that. So what was that like?
It was great. It was teamwork, because the thing was, it was organisation. A lot of people worked very, very hard to get there. And I consider myself really lucky, privileged to be actually leader at that particular time.
Okay.
And I think the hard work, it was the organisation, that was the only thing that was missing. And And if we hadn't organised, we wouldn't have won some of those marginal wards, just to sort of win by about sort of 70, 80 votes to get in. And that was sort of the organisation, getting a full-time organiser, making sure that people went out, because the ethos before was, if I've got 3,000 votes, I'd like to get 3,500.
Right.
So we changed it to say, you know what, if you've got 2,500, you're still going to win, but we'll take those 500 or convert them to 100 in another another ward, sorry.
Yeah.
That's where we need them. And by doing that, we did our numbers. We thought we were going to get 37, we got 35, so we were pretty close.
Okay.
And that's when, it was a great day.
Was around that time, do you think also, 2014, was attitudes shifting around things like austerity and stuff, where people were kind of maybe getting a little fed up now? And do you think that's, again, your heartland better than anyone else? Do you think people were, again, maybe switching and thinking, enough of this? Do you think that contributed to it?
I think it did contribute to it, but looking back on it, it wouldn't have been enough for us.
Okay.
Because this is a traditional Conservative borough.
Yeah, that's right.
And what we did was, a year and a half out, we knocked on doors.
Okay.
We worked hard. We took no breaks.
Right.
We made sure that all the target wards were worked so well that we sort of knew where every Labour promise was. And then on the day of the election, I wasn't even seen in my own ward, because we were in target wards to make sure that you get those votes out. Because inherently, the local elections, the turnout could be anything between 35 to 45%. It's not like a general election where you're going to get sort of 70 plus. So the dedicated people will come out, and that's where we had to make sure that it was our people that came out.
And on that campaign trail, when you're knocking doors and trying to talk to people, did you kind of encounter what I call it fatism, where people kind of see you from this bit and they just sort of think, turban, beard, I'm not sure about this guy. Were there any people ever in your face about it, or were they just not brave enough to sort of say it, or did
I think you understand. Your radar does kick in. You think, I'm not making any headway here.
Okay.
But certainly, I think it's a lot less now.
Okay.
I think people are a lot more mature about it, and I think the knowledge is sort of, sifted through to everybody, and I think a lot of the people are sort of good, decent human beings.
Yeah.
And I think where we did come across people was not on our colour or the turban. It was more to do with the politics.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it was funny because sometimes they'll say to me, we're not going to vote for you because of your leader.
Yeah.
And it, Ed, who I think was a good leader. But then
this is Miliband, not Sheeran, by the way. But go on. Yeah.
Ed Miliband.
Okay.
And certainly what we had to do was actually look at our local politics and our local policies, and making sure that those policies came to the fore. And we had a message, and we made sure we got that message out, and getting that message out to everybody. When it got to a point where the opposition or the administration of the time tried to copy our ideas.
Right.
But we were sort of, we knew our hard work was going to carry through. We just carried on relentlessly. And there was no way they could match our work ethic. And that work ethic then carried us through. And that's why we're here.
And did you get the all-encompassing support from both the Sikh community and maybe other ethnic minority communities, or did you find that there was maybe some resistance again within the community? Again, I come back to this thing that quite a lot of business people and a lot of Sikhs and indeed sort of Muslim folks are involved in businesses and doing very well, and therefore they maybe think their values are more Tory aligned and less Labour oriented. Did you kind of tend to find that there was some resistance to you because of that, or not?
I think it worked a little bit both ways, because I know there are Conservative voters who voted with us.
Okay.
So that was positive.
Possibly at this level, but not at national level, you'd say.
So they'll vote with us locally. But certainly I think the trick was to ensure not to actually represent one community.
Yeah.
The trick was to actually sort of say, look, we're here for everybody.
Yeah.
And so therefore, we made sure, first of all, getting a diverse group of candidates who were representative of the borough.
Yeah.
Whether we had Jews in there, Muslims in there, Sikhs in there, Hindus in there, Christians in there, gays in there.
Yeah.
And, so everything was right. And I think that is the representation we needed to prove. And we had that in the group. By having that in the group, we could then go and reach out to all the people. If I'd gone after one community, I don't think the result would have been what it was.
Let me ask you a question. It's a leading question and so on. And I'll tell you why I'm going to ask it and the way I asked it. But because you're a Sikh and you got yourself into this position, did you find Sikhs knocking on your door saying, "Can you do this for me or do this for me?" because of where you are? And if so, did you or didn't you? Or did you? How did you explain it away if you couldn't do something?
Well, I think that came up very, very quickly.
Okay.
And you know, the classic thing was, I hit an abort via.
That's it.
It's like,
I wish I could do that accent. I wish I could do that accent. I can't do that accent.
And the thing is, in England, you know, the role is public servant. You know, dunya the nokkar.
Yes.
And if you're the servant, you haven't got the power that you have in Punjab. So certainly, I you know, try to illustrate to people. If you wanted me to do
you can't
these
take a bribe.
Yeah.
But go on.
Well, that's precisely it.
Job for you.
You know, if you wanted me to be that powerful, you needed to have made me a politician back home in Punjab, not here.
Yeah. No.
Here, home is straight.
You're looking after everyone's needs.
Everyone, every community.
Yeah. And the reason I ask you that is obviously, having met and interviewed my friend Tandesi, you know, I know that, you know, there's obviously somebody who was on his case about, you know, freeing Juggy, and I think, like everyone, we'd love to get this guy free and over here. But because he was doing some local business, talking about trains, he got sort of abused on Twitter for that, which is, why aren't you doing this to help your own instead of actually helping other people and stuff? And he very eloquently explained, you know, I was elected by my constituents to do this, a bit like you are.
Yeah.
I've got to help them, but, you know, where I can do stuff, I will do stuff.
Absolutely.
So that was interesting.
Certainly, when the Sikh community say, you know, can you get access to the MPs? Will the MPs support this? And I will do everything possible. Like Tandesi asked me, could you actually get Mike and Wes to actually support the Sikh National Memorial?
Oh, yes.
And certainly, you know, when I asked Wes, you know, he said he's already done it. Mike said he will certainly do it.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, where we want to do is get to those people who can actually help influence. But Tan is absolutely right.
Yeah.
He's got a job that actually encapsulates the whole community. He can't stop doing the other job just to do this. And I know, you know, when a few of the Sikh community came to me and said, will you actually write letter to your MP? Of course I would.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the right thing to do, because in a democracy, Juggy should not be in prison.
Absolutely not.
And we should do everything we can. But that doesn't mean suddenly, you know, doing things...
Dropping everything to do, you know, and I think that's the fair thing. You know, we will always, you know, as communities and as community leaders, people should put their weight behind the right stuff. But at the same time, you've got to, if you're elected to a public office, you've got to look after the public, first and foremost as well. So that's interesting. Now, qualities of being, you know, in politics and being a leader and so on. Now, I read somewhere that, you know, and this is a description, you know, Jazz has a big heart, and a hard head. You know, if people said that about me, he's got a big head and a hard heart, but, you know, that's just me. So what do you think are the qualities that are needed to make a good kind of like leader, politician, advocate?
I think be fair.
Okay.
And be fair, make sure you don't fire from the hip. I've been guilty of that, but you learn very, very quickly.
Is this just saying what comes to you and then thinking afterwards, wish I'd said it like that, or wish I'd rephrased it? Is that what you mean?
I wish I'd just held back.
Okay.
And sometimes, you know, you're sitting in the chamber, you say something, you think, you know what, if I'd just held off for another minute or so, I wouldn't have done that. And, you know, one of the things I've learned very quickly is if I'm going to write an email, I'll write it and then I'll go to sleep. And in the morning, the email will take a completely different shape, because what you really have written is straight from the heart.
It's emotion, isn't it?
It's emotion, and you need to take the emotion out and actually work on the absolute sort of facts of what you're trying to do. Yeah. And doing that properly and taking a second sort of guess, not a second guess, but a second chance for you to sort of reflect on what you were thinking. The other thing I like doing is perhaps having a good group of people around me and sort of saying, well, I'm going to do this, what do you think? Yeah. And that way, you know, you get somebody else's opinion. That's two heads are better than one. Yeah. So as you're doing that, the outcomes are certainly a lot better. For instance, you know, we're looking at rough sleepers at the moment. That's a key issue. Yeah. Austerity is really hitting hard. Yeah. But without getting political, the way to fix rough sleeping was really easy, to become hard and move them on. But that doesn't fix the problem. What that does, it actually just moves the poor, the people, the vulnerable who are suffering already onto the next street corner or into maybe another borough. That's not the right thing to do.
Which is the kind of thing that was being applied to do in Windsor for the royal wedding. Let's actually move them out of here so the cameras don't pick up on them. And they're someone else's problem. I mean, you know, I spent some time, you know, and don't purport to be an expert on this, but just being out listening to Rough Sleepers on a show that I did recently with the Glassdoor charity. I recorded it last year. But to hear some of the stories, and you know, people, and including myself, would often look at these guys and think, you know, you're just either lazy, you're a drunk, you're a drug addict, whatever, you know, you're not helping yourself. And when you listen to some of the stories of how they've got themselves in that position, you realise, you know, there, for the grace of God, could go on. You know, it could happen to anyone.
It could, and quite frankly, you know, if I don't drink, I never have done, but if I was living on the street, say last week when it was bitterly cold, maybe I would have turned to drink. You know, that's not my, you know, it's not their fault. It's the circumstances they find.
Well, a lot of it, I mean, I found out that a lot of people, and I was told by them, you know, people like you said, you know what, I never drunk before I became homeless but I need it now to numb the pain. Sometimes to just knock me out, to take me out of this awful reality I'm in. You know, and that's the way it is. You know, and just you know, on an aside, I mean, there was a rather eccentric lady in Peterborough, my hometown, who would sit in doorways with a push pram and loads of pot plants and stuff. She'd also made a little home in a doorway, and I used to go running past her, and I actually got scared thinking there was a child in the push pram, and approached her one time, and she kind of like got up and sort of like barked at me, and I kind of ran away. So, and I then made it my position to actually buy a sandwich and a cup of coffee, and walked over and said, "Look, I've got this. Would you like it?" And she took it off me, and I said, "By the way, is your child okay?" And she said, "There's no child in there. It's just my life in here. It's my possessions." I thought about her over the week. She disappeared from there and moved on because they blocked the doorway of this shop up, and I never saw her. And then sadly, I read last night she died over the weekend. You know, and I felt so guilty, thinking, God, I should have done something earlier or more. In fair play to the council apparently tried to help her, but she just said that's the way I choose to live. So you know, she didn't want sympathy and something, but you know, maybe she was eccentric, maybe she had mental health issues. But the whole thing about rough sleeping, you know, when you delve a bit deeper into it and then just walk past it. It is very, very tragic.
I mean, it is tragic, and what we try to do here is certainly give a bit of land, which the council owned, to the Salvation Army.
Brilliant.
And the Salvation Army have started a project with a lot of faith groups. And what they're doing now is to try and they're going to put the shipping containers, which actually look like proper homes. And the way they're going to do it is to actually put them in there, get them stabilised, have them there for 3 months. And those who can work, they got so many old bikes. What they do is they train them to become bike mechanics. And some of their people then go off to work for, you know, Evans Cycles or whoever. So they literally give them a second chance in life. And I'm really proud that the council has, you know, got involved, given them the land, so that the rough sleepers. I mean, I was at an event last night where people said, "What are you doing about the rough sleepers?" I said, "Look, we could have done something. You just got to hang on, because once the Salvation Army's shipping containers come in, they're going to take them in, give them a warm meal, give them a warm bed, and certainly try and look at, because the immigration status is another issue. As a council, we can't help them because they got no recourse to public funds. So effectively, you know, the 42 rough sleepers around Ilford, 38 of them have no recourse to public funds. So the idea is, you know, if they come from India, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, or wherever.
Eastern Europe, whatever.
Eastern Europe, but their embassies don't want to know. So certainly I think working with a charity like Ramphal, who are going to actually try and help to get to the bottom of where are these people from. And I think that's the humane way of doing it, the compassionate way of doing it, because certainly just moving them on to the next street is not what we wanted to do.
That's certainly an initiative to be applauded. Any organisation that does that, as indeed do various like the Langa Seva societies around the country who feed and so on. And obviously, if people can provide shelters, even better. Just moving on very quickly, just mindful of time. You know, last year the Guardian picked you out in that survey of 1,000 of the Black, Asian, minority ethnic people of influence in the UK. When you kind of saw that, heard that, read it, what was your kind of reaction to being picked out amongst those folks?
Well, I think it was wow, really, because you don't think of it like that. You don't think of it, but it does actually show that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I don't think there are any false glass ceilings there. I think what it is, we actually have to raise our own standards, our own expectations. And I didn't come into politics to do something like I want to be a leader, or I didn't even want to come into politics, as I've already explained. It was almost forced upon me. But being here, you almost get a sense of, because there are so few Sikh leaders. I mean, there's a guy, he used to be the leader of Kirklees Council, his name's Mahbub Khan. Okay. And he came to see me, and he said to me, he said, Jazz, and he speaks very fluent Punjabi, and I didn't know he could. Okay. But suddenly he goes, Sardar Bagala, he goes, do it well. Brother, do it well. And I always remember that, because he goes, the pressures I had in Kirklees was I was representing not me, because I was representing the whole community. And he goes, you're doing the same. And he goes, anytime you need help, I'm here. And you think, there are some really great people, and you get help, or you get offers of help from people from unexpected sources. And when you sort of look at it and you think, well, you know what, this guy's right, because it's not going to be, nobody knows who Jazz Atwal is. Yeah. Nobody knows.
Well, the Guardian knows who you are. Your kids don't know. They won't let you in the house, but the Guardian knows who you are. That's the key takeaway from this. At least the Guardian knows.
The Guardian knows.
Who you are. That's a brilliant thing. So just moving from the UK to India, because obviously you came from the Punjab, you've got an Indian connection through birth, I guess. So, the political discourse in India right now and so on, if you were, let's say, in Punjab as a politician, not taking a bribe, because I know you're a man of principles, you wouldn't do that. But, what are the key things over there that you think politically? What are the hot potatoes that need to be, and issues that need to be addressed?
Well, I think you've hit the biggest hot potato there is corruption.
Right.
It is people in authority. It's almost like a privilege. Okay. You can abuse that privilege anytime you want and work it in your favor. And once you are in that place where you control the police, because here, if I do something wrong, the police will collar me just like they'll collar the next person. Yeah. But if I'm in India, if I do something wrong, all I need to do is make a phone call to the nearest MP, because I know him, it's okay. Once you've got that in society, you've got to get past that. Yeah. I appreciate, you touched upon Jaggi, I appreciate the political situation. Yeah. But on a basic level, the corruption, we're such a pious society, such a religious society, 5 rivers, etc. But the problem is that when it comes to the power, we fall short, and sometimes we're guilty, because there's plenty of my friends from here who will go to India to help out in the elections, because they know at some stage those favors are going to come back. Right. Now, really, that shouldn't be.
That's the wrong way of doing it.
That's the wrong way of doing it, and that's why when people come to me and they sort of say, "Well, it's always a simple one, like a planning issue." Yeah. I'll always say, "Well, what's the planning rules say?" I'm now quite conversant in that. So, right. So I know, when they've done something wrong, I say, look, there's a problem here. Yeah. You shouldn't have done this. Yeah. You live in a conservation area. You can't build that sort of shed that covers half and you couldn't have knocked that tree down. But in India, you could take conservation. You could go anywhere, and suddenly, you can build a house in the middle of a agricultural field, and nobody will say anything.
I guess it is that point of power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And that's kind of India. And I know there's going to be certainly some people, people, when I sort of say that, people come back to me with, you're disloyal to India because you think you're a Gordar. It's not about being a Gordar, not being disloyal to India. It's just that, as you sort of say, here we have a structure and a framework that we all have to adhere to. In India, people get themselves elected into positions of power, and then basically that was it. It's like I'm lining my own pockets and not everybody else's. So just trying to move away from the world of politics and the 24/7 and what do you do in order to kind of wind down and relax a bit, if you're allowed back home any time?
Now I've got a family which is not young anymore, but certainly my
costing you a fortune. Yep, go on.
Absolutely, so certainly I think spending time making sure that they're just to drop their daughter off at university, go and pick them up. I'll try and do those things, because certainly that means if I spend an hour in the car driving
Quality time, isn't it? Bonding time.
It's that bonding time, because I know I can't be on my iPhone, and she's not on her iPhone, and she's got no data left. So,
get a better tariff. Tell your dad to get you a better tariff. That's dreadful, isn't it? No data left. What kind of excuse is that for a dad? Go on.
No, and I think occasionally we will sort of try, and me and my son will look at. We're sports people.
Okay.
And he woke me up only the other night to watch Wilder fight in the heavyweight championship.
Okay.
And we watched the fight together at sort of ungodly hour of 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. You know,
could have been worse. He could have woken you up and said, "What the hell? Who the hell are you? What are you doing sleeping in my house?"
He could have done that, but he didn't, thankfully. But it's I think as you grow older, you start to appreciate that time more, and certainly just spending time with the family and doing, you know, what I would have said nothing is very valuable to me now, because you know I get so little of it. And certainly the other thing that I have started doing, I've had a bad back for a year.
Okay.
But certainly I started cycling.
Okay.
And cycling, going out with a couple of people, and cycling for 50 miles on a Saturday morning.
Brilliant.
Come back 2.5 hours later, absolutely shattered, but feeling great. Because you know, as you said, we're about the same age. We've got to look after our health now.
Absolutely, nobody else is going to do it.
No, and cycling is a lot easier on my joints and all the old football injuries. So certainly, I think.
Well, obviously, I mean, I do a bit of running, and so I'm training at the moment for a full marathon, but I do cycling as well. I have to say, it is quite exhilarating. You know, it is something. I must admit, I'm kind of late to the party, and it sounds like you're late to the party of cycling, because we used to do it as kids, I guess.
Yeah.
And then when you learn to drive that car at sort of 17 to get your license, cycle's gone. Everything is kind of like behind the wheel and so on. So just obviously, you know, in terms of your contribution, not just to your family, but to your community, to the country and so on, you know, in future years, how would you like sort of jazz to be kind of thought of? What would you like people to sort of say about what jazz was?
I think you know, made the area better.
Okay.
I think made a contribution, made a difference.
Made a difference.
And I think making that difference is really important. And just even for a short period of time, just to do the right things. I mean, politically, you know, we're in politics at the moment. But to be able to save 48% of your budget, monthly budget, that's what we've had to do, £117 million over the last 3 years. Now that's been done. We've got to find another 50 million over the next 5 years. But to try and set this council as a viable business, and certainly residents get value for money. We were told, you know, it's like there's no money left, to finding innovative ways of how we could actually enhance the area. We promised we would build a swimming pool.
Okay.
Swimming pools cost about 15 million pounds. I remember getting in my car with the finance director and driving to Bradford, and we saw a swimming pool built in a school for 4.5 million pounds.
Okay.
We thought we'll buy that.
We'll do that instead. We'll save 10 million or something. Yeah.
That's right. And we promised that before the last election.
Yeah.
And that swimming pool is being built.
Brilliant.
And we're building another one in Wanstead, which is not too far away from here. The idea is that you're making a difference. That contribution is going to be here long after I'm gone, long after this administration's gone.
Yeah.
And because those next generations of people are going to have something to do.
Yeah.
Because that's the problem, isn't it? We talk about health, we talk about crime,
Yeah.
we talk about sort of all sorts of social issues. But if you haven't got the ability to go into these places and actually exert some energy, so making that difference, whether it's a swimming pool or whether it's you know, the other problem, which is HMOs, because these are nice big houses, people are short of money, they want to convert it into smaller and smaller units, which then brings its own problems. How can we actually reverse that? How can we stop that? So making that kind of a difference, and certainly I think from a family side, you know, just to try and get my kids to become decent human beings.
Absolutely.
You know, educated, decent human beings.
Yeah. And contribute. Yeah.
And that's when you look back on your time and you say, you know what, I did well. If that happens, I'm still working on it.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. Yeah. That's good. That's good. So just kind of shifting away from things and talking more about Jazz the Man and so on. So, you know, some random stuff here. You know, can you remember the first bit of music you ever bought or purchased?
The first bit of music, I think probably, A.S. Khan, Giddiyan Di Rani.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that was a classic song. If you look back over the years,
Yeah.
from 70s and 80s, that would have been the song.
Okay.
And then sort of Bindra Kiya came with Yar Bolda.
Yeah.
And,
So you're very much a traditional Punjabi music person.
I absolutely love it. And I don't know where it's come from because I've lived, like I said, I'm 54, 46 years have been spent here.
Right.
And yet, I love listening to the Punjabi songs
Okay.
and the traditional songs. I was listening to, it's like my brother was a Bruce Lee fan before Bruce Lee had actually passed away.
Right.
I was a Kuldeep Manik fan when nobody could stand him.
Okay.
And, I think even at university, people would say, oh, Manik aa gaya, because, I had a small beard and a big bug, and and all I would do is listen to his songs.
Yeah. They obviously never confuse you for Bruce Lee at any point in time. So there's a plus. And what about things like your movies? Is your taste in movies again? Are you a movie fan? And again, are they traditional? Is it Bollywood or Indian or?
No, I think I'm not a traditional in anything really, because what I really like to do is I'll appreciate a good movie.
Okay.
The classic Ben-Hur, absolutely love it. I must have seen it about 10, 15 times every Christmas, every Easter.
That's because it's on all the time. It's on all the time. You can't. You put something. It's Ben-Hur or a circus. Take your pick. Go on.
That's right. But this Christmas I went out and bought the classic Sholay.
Okay.
And the whole family sat down and watched it because it's like I was saying to my kids, you're going to enjoy this film. They thought, this is like made in the 70s, whatever. This is going to be rubbish. They actually enjoyed it because it was a good
one of
film.
those classic movies, isn't it? From that.
And certainly I think Gladiator is another film which I really like.
So it sounds like to me, if you had a time to kind of like come back in a different life, you'd have been a Roman, because you sort of seem to have this thing of Ben-Hur and Gladiator. you kind of seem to have that sort of the vibe going on there. Yeah. Now you said to me before we started, you don't get to watch much TV, but then you actually sort of said, but I watched your show, which, big, obviously that big head is getting even bigger now. So having you said that, so obviously I'm not going to ask you about your TV show. Do you get much time to read, books as opposed to sort of work-related content?
No, I mean, sadly, I don't get to read as much as I buy the books.
Okay.
And then suddenly, I'll blitz one every now and again. I like the last one I read was Alistair Campbell's The Winners.
Okay.
And all the success stories and what they do.
Right.
And you try and sort of emulate, see what makes them tick and how they arrived at certain decisions.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Let me make a recommendation. Try an audiobook if you manage to do that, because I too find it was very difficult to actually sit down and physically read. There's always something to distract. But now, I mean, especially if you're going out and about and stuff, I mean, maybe not so easy when you've got people around you, but I do either running or whatever by myself or cycling. And usually an audiobook, music is there, but sometimes an audiobook. And that's the only way I've managed to get through quite a lot of books, actually, listening to them and so on. It's pretty good. It's a bit lazy, I suppose. You're not flipping pages, but it's worth trying that. And when it comes to things like, food and so on, obviously you're a man who is looking after himself after a few scares and stuff, so diet-wise and stuff. Is there a preferred sort of dish and thing that you like, that sort of preferred type of menu? You're not a strict vegetarian or something? Or
I am a vegetarian.
You are, okay.
Yeah. And what I do is, I think, as you said, a few scares, I think it's just warnings by Dr. Singh.
Okay.
He basically, he's a good friend.
Who else?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, when he sort of says, look, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, or you're going to end up dead.
Yeah, that sounds like Dr. Singh to me. Yeah, they don't pull their punches, these Dr. Singhs, do they? Yeah.
No, and I think what I'll try and do is 5 days I'll eat really healthily.
Okay.
And then 2 days, I will indulge a little, not indulge in anything too much, but certainly my favourite dish is saag and makki di roti. I can eat that every day of the week.
Well, the same for me actually. That was my standout dish. It was called saag makki di roti. They're the things if there was a not desert island dish, that would be mine. It would be whatever and so on. So
and the green chili.
Well, I can't do the chili. I have to say that's it. No, so you've got one up on me there. So I can't do the chili, and so on. So what about you? I mean, you obviously travelled extensively work-wise over the years, and you've been in a privileged position, and I have. Is there any, if you had to pick one place in the world, and I'm going to purposely say not Redbridge, that you could go to just to kind of like have more of a time to sort of look around, chill out, or you really liked, where would that be?
I think California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any specific part of California? It's big.
Well, it's massive, but certainly I love the houses. I love the area, and every time I've had an opportunity, that's where I've ended up.
Okay.
And I almost at one time almost moved there.
Moved there, yeah. Well, I was presented with a similar opportunity, but my kids were a bit too grown up to do that. So I did, San Francisco is a brilliant place for me. I mean, San Fran is great. So because I spent some time working in San Jose, just
I couldn't live there. I mean, I'll probably live towards San Jose, sort of a little bit out, but you're about an hour's drive away.
But it's great. It's great. So just very quickly, we kind of. I purposely ask people about some of their heroes, but I tend to ask them about sort of influencers and heroes in a way of, by way of thing I call dinner party, which is, if you were hosting a dinner party, you could have people from any place and era and genre, dead or alive, to come and attend, excluding family, but people that you would love to kind of like learn more about and so on. Which three would you pick and why?
I think one of them would be, I mean, it's not a particular person.
Okay.
But if it was, any of those soldiers who came to Europe 100 years ago.
Okay.
Because, to leave those golden sort of fields of Punjab,
right.
Whether you're a Hindu, a Sikh, a Muslim,
yeah.
Obviously from me being a Sikh, to actually talk to them and ask them, what it was. They came here in a quarrel that wasn't theirs, in a fight that they had no understanding of, but when the king called, they answered that call and they came in their thousands, hundreds of thousands.
And they made the supreme sacrifice for
they made the supreme sacrifice, and there's still, some of them still not buried, and some of them, are not known. And yet, when we look at all the films, they were the ones who were left out. Yeah. They weren't recognized. They weren't given the dignity that they deserved. And I asked myself, when they came here in a land that was alien to them, in a terrain that was, unbearable, to be in those trenches, it was almost better to go over the parapet and get killed, because then at least it's over. Yeah. But for them to show the kind of valor they did, I'd love to be able to sort of sit down.
An interesting conversation. So who else in your other two slots, two chairs would be filled by?
Well, I think with that sort of military history kind of thing, I'd love to sort of, Hari Singh Nalua.
Okay.
When the...
So just for our viewers, just explain, because some viewers won't understand who Hari Singh Nalua is.
Of course,
so go on.
No, he was the famed general for Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who was, the ruler of the Punjab.
Okay.
And certainly upon hearing of his death, when he said, I would have swapped half my kingdom for that one man. And somebody said, why? Half your kingdom for one man? He said, with that one man, I would have won that kingdom back. And you think, how powerful or how strategic that man must have been. Yeah. And I think when you think of that, and you think, what? I'd love to.
So because we're running short of time, so let me ask, hurry along. So who else would, the third chair would be, anybody else you can think?
I think the third one would certainly be someone along the lines of Mother Teresa, Florence Nightingale, or...
No, hang on. So you can't have more chairs. Yeah. But Mother Teresa or Florence Nightingale would be perfect picks. And if there was someone that maybe wasn't as popular in your mind to do the dishes, who you think you wouldn't want them sitting at the table with you, who would that person?
Well, I wouldn't want. I think I'd love to sort of get to Hitler before he became the power he was, just to sort of knock him about and sort of say, what the hell are you going to do?
Yeah, I really want to knock Hitler about. Big in my book. So I've just introduced something else. There's a film at the moment doing the rounds. It's probably my favourite film. It's called 3 Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. It's about a lady who actually put 3 billboards to highlight injustice. Now, if you were allowed to put up one billboard outside someone's house, office, place to actually highlight an injustice, anywhere in the world, whose house or place would you put a billboard outside of, and what would it say?
I think it'll be outside number 10 at the moment. To Theresa May.
Okay.
You got it wrong. That would be the message.
Was that just the time of the election?
Oh no, I think for the last 10 years they've been going on, or the last sort of 8 years they've been going after a program of austerity. Yeah. You got the benefits cap coming in, and certainly the councils are crying out for money which they've lost. Okay. And it's not the councils; it's the individual residents. We've had to raise council tax by 3%. The reason we're raising it is because the adult social care, the elderly who've done their time, who now can't look after themselves, and we're now having to tax everybody, be the tax collector. Sure. And I think certainly Theresa May, who's the the office bearer at the moment. It would have to be whoever is Prime Minister to sort of, you've got to do...
There's going to be a billboard going outside number 10 at some point in time, and this man's responsible, so you won't have looked very far. Jazz, this is Fishbowl, and there's some random questions in there. I've made them slightly larger so you can actually read them, because I couldn't read them, and most of them I guess couldn't, or that wasn't... So go on, read that out and just answer it, please. I'm sure very honestly.
Do you play a musical instrument?
Oh, okay.
If no, what would you like to have learnt? The answer is no.
Okay.
I would love to have learned to play the tabla.
Tabla, okay. So these are the kind of Indian kind of drums.
Indian drums, yeah.
That's great.
I mean, I think that would have been something, but it's never happened.
Okay.
Is there a charity or a cause you're passionate about, more passionate about than others? And I think children's charities, it doesn't matter which one it is. Certainly every year I try and do the London to Brighton. The British Heart Foundation gets money. We've done, we try and do with the Sikh Welfare Society. We try and do the charities in India. So, you know, charitable
work is brilliant. Yeah. That's great. So these aren't random, they're all over the place, so go on.
Have you ever parked in a, family with children's spot and you've no kids in the car?
Go on.
Well, I can say that my children have said to me, Dad, you've become a great driver since you become the leader of the council. So the answer is sadly probably yes, but not in the last 4 years.
Oh dear. I have to say I did it once. You know, I'm going to fess up here. I did it once, and yeah, I was caught out. But you know, sort of smart mouth me when the woman said, "You've got no children." I said, "I have. They just happen to be 19 and 20, and they're at home." And that was it. And I drove off. So, but there you go. Wrong of me to do that.
Okay. Something you've done that you would tell others not to do.
Going to politics, maybe?
Yeah, I think there are so many things that I did as a child, which I'm now telling my children not to do.
Oh, come on, just for the sake of your kids, you've got to name one of these. Now that you've said it, come on.
Having, at university, having dinner in Hyde Park at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Don't do that.
I'm not going to. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. That sounds a bit. Yeah, your dad was a rough sleeper, by the way. So, we've got a couple more of these before we wrap.
A band or artist you would have loved to see or have seen live in concert. I think I would love to have seen Muhammad Rafi.
Okay.
He sings everything great. I think he was the greatest singer that's ever lived.
Brilliant. I can't argue with that. One.
How much is 7... I've been set up.
No, definitely not. Go on.
How much is a 750 gram of Frosty's breakfast cereal at the pound shop? A pound.
Actually, that's £2. So there you go. That was a set-up question. That was one of my kids came up with that and actually fooled me. So I thought I had to put it in there. It's actually £2. So
£2.
You go to a pound shop and you get and you go to the counter with it. Sorry, that one's £2. There you go. Jas, it's been an absolute pleasure bantering and chatting with you today. I trust you found it enjoyable. You know, appreciate all the great stuff you're doing here in Redbridge and so on. So thank you very much for your time today and for this lovely setting that you allowed us to do this. Locked in, and hopefully it's not been too much of a torture chamber, so,
no, it's been great.
Or a dreadful inquisition. So thank you very much, Jas. All that remains for me is to say thank you very much for joining me with Late Night Banter tonight. Wagaju Kata, Wagaju Fateh, and look forward to some more banter with you very soon.